Welcome back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television, and thank you so much for staying with us. We begin conversations this morning in studio. We speak with Mr. Allan Stewart, the director of TEMA, and we're talking about the fact that we know that the rainy season has been declared, I think it was last week, and our preparation for the hurricane season. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, ma'am. It's good to be here once again.
Of course, always a pleasure speaking with you in studio and of course, getting the updates and learning new terminologies because every time you come here, I learn a new word, I learn a new term, and so I'm always excited to have conversations with you. We know that the rainy season was declared, usually it's in June, if I'm not mistaken, but we saw, I think it was last week.
That's right.
Tuesday or something like that, we saw the declaration from the Meteorological Office. What does that mean in terms of the type of rainy season that we could be looking forward to for this season?
Well, going on the backdrop that, we have been starved for the amount of water that we expected to get in our taps, and as the end results of that, we are very, very, very grateful that the rainy season is on. And it has begun, and therefore it requires us to do the necessary preparation. So I think WASA is a very happy camper. They will be trying to capture as much as possible to keep our taps wet and as we move along. But more so, it's just at the eve of the hurricane season as well. So the hurricane season begins from the month of June, the 1st of June, to November the 30th. And therefore, it means that there is a lot to be done. It means, therefore, that given the signals that we have seen over the past 2 years, things are happening at a much earlier than we have grown accustomed to over the years. We recognize for us in this part of the hemisphere that the Atlantic hurricane season for those of us in the southern part of the archipelago of islands have been preparing more or less between August, September, October. We have seen that those active months that you see a step up in. But from the last 2 years, we have seen these developments very much low on our latitude level, and therefore we have to be careful. We saw what happened with Beryl just last year at the 7th of July, and therefore it speaks volumes, and therefore it gives rise to us doing things a little differently. And for this year, we began our preparation as early as February, given our experiences, given the challenges with funding and procurement processes that goes through a rudiments of steps that sometimes the viscosity is just not where you will want it to be. It's not galloping. It is very, very a slow process, and therefore it has put a strain. Another major area is funding. The scriptures say money answereth all things, and it if you didn't believe it, that is real in the sense that with limited amount of funding and the stresses of past events dating back to December of 2023, we have recognized that hydrometeorological events tied together with the event of 2024, which the worst of its kind, with the Operation Gulf Stream. And last year, we also had a Beryl touching us in some way, and it has placed us in a very, very, very challenging situation. And recently, we had reasons to have deeper discussion with the administration of the Tobago House of Assembly, and they have given their commitment or with the understanding of these challenges. It's important for us to make our case, and that was made. And so we are looking forward that our preparation will pick up pace going forward.
What are some of the infrastructural measures that have to be put in place to bring us to a place of better preparedness?
First of all, let me start with our domestic community. It's important that we speak to Tobago and say, listen, you have to strengthen your resilience is very important at the residential level, where you make yourself the communication outreach team community outreach team normally say, make yourself a hard target. Our exposure is one that is set, meaning therefore we are north of Trinidad and Tobago, and therefore the likelihood of us being impacted require aggressiveness of what we do at the community level. For example, in the homes, you have to make sure that trees taken care of, river courses and ravines and drainage cleanse on that level. And then when you take it a little further, you have to make sure that your roof is well attached, and you do the necessary repairs. Now is the time to make sure that it is completed as we move into the season. So apart from that, there is that element that somebody will be impacted. And therefore, your family emergency plan becomes very, very crucial in that undertaking. Ensure that you can take care of yourself for 72 hours. Make that your goal. That is what we ask of the members of the community, that you can take care of yourself for 72 hours. In a very widespread event, it is almost impossible, given the human resource that we have from a professional angle, to respond to every call. And we are talking about impacts at a disaster level, where there is island-wide impact, and homes are damaged in quantities. It's critical that we build that level of resilience at the community level. And then there is the rest of the varying communities. For example, divisions of the Tobago House of Assembly, they have a key role in preparing their estates, in the sense that it's important that they pay attention for the main. It's important for business continuity. They have a service to provide as well to the rest of the community. For example, the IQUD, road clearance, and making sure that what you do before, during, and after make a lot of sense to the community and to the persons who are impacted. Or road networks, removing debris, things like that. It's important that utilities, I really appreciate what TNTech and some of these persons are doing. But in the mix of that, we also saw that we have some challenges with overhead lines. Utility lines are now a menace in the society, and we are doing all that we can from a TEMA perspective, given our responsibility of coordinating a network of agencies. So we are working along with them to ensure that level of consciousness, because we have seen what has happened, the slightest breeze blow, a branch pull along a line and things like that. And I have come to conclude that, we can conclude that just as how water is an imperative, so is our communications. And therefore, that resilience needs to be at that level as well. So that is very important. And then we have seen what is happening with sargassum and the onslaught on our beaches and how our way of life and things like that. So we have these compounding issues as a result of climate change and the warming of our waters, that we have to continuously do the necessaries to prepare ourselves for this.
And what is the likelihood, as we enter into what we call the hurricane season, based on your experience and profession, of course, and the observations of the patterns that is taking place and systems being formed, what is the likelihood of us, where we are located, be in the path of a hurricane, for a hurricane, sir?
Yeah, it's important. I always tell people about a story because some of these events, our age just doesn't allow us to connect. So I always bring the story of 1933. 1933, a storm of a particular strength passed through the southern part of Trinidad. The southern part of Trinidad. What does that tell you? It means that Trinidad and Tobago, from 7 degrees north of the equator, finds itself in the hurricane belt. I've seen it in textbooks, but they are wrong. Even in a textbook, it is wrong. That, it's good talk for tourism. Okay, we are south of the archipelago of islands, but we are not out of the hurricane belt. The hurricane belt begins 7 degrees north of the equator. Trinidad and Tobago is located between 10 and 11 degrees of the equator. And therefore, the likelihood of us being impacted continues to demonstrate that that is a reality based on what we even saw last year, where it's for the first time. If I didn't believe that there is a God last year, I believe that there is a God. When I look and saw what happened with Beryl, I always say anything get to us at that level, at 11 degrees north of the equator and falls between 50 degrees longitude, there's no way that we are getting away. But I'm not sure if it was the chief secretary's prayer. I always feel that way when he prayed for us that we be spared, and I was a bit nervous. I was really nervous. So the probabilities of we being impacted occurred, and what happened to you before can always happen again. That's how life is, and therefore we have to be very, very serious as a people. There are some among us sometimes behave as though they are insulated. But I am saying to us, we all have to be prepared, because climate change, regardless of your belief pattern, your education, whether you are ignorant of the fact, it is very, very, very true that we would have been impacted very severely in the past, and it will happen again. And therefore, it's important for us to prepare ourselves, because climate change is galloping at a pace beyond. The sargassum is a proof of this. The sargassum was named after the Sargasso Sea. Now the waters are warm in our territories, and these things are breeding and impacting it. Those are signs that the waters are heating up drastically, and therefore the probabilities of us being impacted is very real.
And in terms of our actual preparedness from an agency standpoint, administrative standpoint, where are we? I know you mentioned that there's always room for improvement, but how confident are you at this stage, as we have like 1 week before we head into the actual hurricane season, as we would call it? How do you feel in terms of Tobago being, okay, we're ready, we're not ready, with 70%, 50%, 60%? Where do you feel we are right now?
Last week, if you had asked me that question, or 2 weeks ago, my answer would have been the truth, that we are not ready. However, given the state of affairs and given the resources that are available to us, our business is to work with what exists, impress upon our charges to do the necessaries for preparation. We have started, as I said, work as early as February this year. We have joined with our partners from Trinidad, the ODPM. This month, the month of May, has been declared Disaster Preparedness and Prevention Month. And therefore, we have our hit the road. We are doing what we can. We have participated in trade winds in the CDRU, the Caribbean Disaster Response Unit. They held their exercises just a few weeks ago here in Tobago. We participated. So we are doing what we can with the resources available to us. There are also major challenges in regards to infrastructure. There's no secret is out there that, we have some structural challenges across at Timor. We have mobility issues with our vehicles and things like that. That is being attended to. I really appreciate the discourse that we had with the chief administrator and the commitment that he has made towards ensuring that our levels of preparedness is where it ought to be. And given his soberness and bringing everybody on board, it's important as an administration that the United Nations speaks about disaster governance. And to me, it's critically important at these levels is where it is tested and proven whether or not it holds sway, whether or not there are commitment at administrative levels to support. We cannot run disaster management based on charity. It's not just enough. And therefore, it's important for even among the corridors of government that leaders, wherever they are, demonstrate as well that they have a role to play and not something that they just tossed upon the disaster office to take care of. There are many, many moving parts, and all of them have to move in this clock.
That is
For
quite
the time
right.
to be correct.
And also, I just wanted to re-emphasize the fact that we have a personal responsibility in terms of ensuring. Is there anything put in place for like a public education campaign to ensure? Because I feel as if sometimes we can take things for granted, and we see we have some sayings that God is our Trinity and God loves us, and that is true. Yes, He loves us. But at the same point in time, we have a social responsibility, a personal responsibility to ensure that we safeguard our property and ourselves. Is there any public education drive or campaign to ensure that we sensitize communities across the island of Tobago to ensure that they understand what they need to have to be prepared and how they manage to take care of themselves for that 72 hours that you're talking about?
It's yes. While the answer is yes, it's insufficient. I always lament that, disaster risk management has become an area of our lives that it even threatens human existence on the face of the planet, especially those of us in the small island developing states, the states of the Caribbean. But it's insufficient from the angle that it's not for the lack of education. I think the people who are involved or has a responsibility know what needs to be done. It's a matter of their level of consciousness, their level of how soberly they look at these threats and what they intend to do. But it's not for the lack of knowledge. Houses burn down every day. Is not people have a clear understanding of fire prevention. It's all about practice and what you do with the information that you have. But as I indicated that it's insufficient, I could qualify that statement by looking at what happens with disaster education in our community or information. For example, the schools, if you could get 2 hours in a school, you have a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's insufficient. When you look at the risk factors and the probabilities of things happening, it's important that we place more emphasis on education from an angle of it being part of the curriculum. And therefore, disaster risks have its place because of our very existence depends on how knowledgeable we are and how adaptive we are, and the transformative processes only comes about with people with that level of consciousness. And therefore, it's imperative that we continue to demonstrate the soberness of it by our regularity, or how pronounced we are and deliberate we are in discharging that bit of information to our communities across the island. That's how we look at it.
All right. I do hope that our viewers are paying attention, and the general public is paying attention and taking on that responsibility to ensure that you remain safe. Listen out for the information that will come from the channels. I think I saw some text over the weekend from the ODP. I know you said you partnered with them. So the information is out there. It's just our responsibility to ensure we get the information, we stay on board with what is happening.
Yeah. I just want to add a couple of things, as you mentioned, the partnership. This month, for example, between by the 28th of this month, which is just a couple days away, we will be going to Shaw Park. We will be meeting with our partners in the disaster management community from the various institutions, and we'll be coming together in a workshop to discuss and to sharpen ourselves going forward. Coming out of all of these exercises, emergency simulation exercises that we had over time, that workshop will be on the 28th at the Shaw Park Cultural Facility. So we will be meeting our partners and discussing it, and we continue into the following month, June, where we area will be participating in the public service initiative. I think it begins around the 13th and goes until the 25th of June, where in some cases the adoption of community innovation in the public as a public service initiatives. So we are part of that process, and we'll utilize. And we hit the road. We'll be in the streets of Scarborough, pumping it up, as you know, the minds and the mindsets of the public is more or less geared. That's the reason why I'm here this morning. You know, the consciousness is all here, and people want the ears are open, and because they want to know, hey, what's happening? You know, so it's a time to speak. It's a time to get it message out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do hope that we keep our ears open and listen to what is happening. Mr. Stewart, thank you so much for joining us this morning and bringing the information. We will remain in touch with you. In fact, we'll bring you back on the program to give us some updates as we proceed into the hurricane season and where we are and what we need to do.
And tell people to get the download the app that is used to collect sargassum information. We are working on that. It's out there for the past a few days or so, but it's wonderful. I've tested it. It's working quite nicely. So go on our Facebook page, go on our and pick up the app and utilize it where you see sargassum reported to us.
Okay, great. So you go onto the TEMA Facebook page to get that information. That's in terms of connecting to the app. There you are. The information is out there. So ensure that you remain connected. We've been speaking with Mr. Allan Stewart, the director of TEMA. We're heading into the hurricane season, and you need to be prepared. You need to know what is happening. So stay in the know. Before we go for a short break, I want to say a special good morning to Miss Abby Allen Moore. And she's saying happy birthday to retired nurse Void Dillon of Charlottesville. And she's praying God's blessings on her life. So happy birthday to you and good morning to you, fine ladies. We have to go for a short break before we continue conversation in studio. And as we go, we invite you to help us. Share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.